Wiggle, wiggle.
Like.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I've had a few requests to do a tips and tricks video on the IS-7. Honestly, the IS-7 is kind of an interesting tank because it has got probably the most RNG armor across any tier 10 in my opinion. A lot of the time, I don't know necessarily what I can rely on, what I can't rely on, what I sometimes think I can rely on something. I end up getting penned, and when I don't think I can rely on it, I end up bouncing around. And so it's got some slippery armor. But I'll be going over just some tips. So basically, I've got 3 games back to back. I just played. I didn't know how exactly they were going to turn out. You can see the timestamp just at the end. I just basically just kind of tried throwing this together. But hopefully this video will help. Basically, with the IS-7, a lot of it is with how your armor is shaped and angled. With the pike nose, especially with this only having about 6 degrees of gun depression. It's not great, but you do have some. So basically, this is the most prime position that you could put the IS-7 in, is where you're hold down, using that gun depression that you have just peeking over a hill will create the strongest amount of armor for your tank when facing the enemies. So just barely peeking over the hill. You can't go over hills that are too steep because you don't have a lot of gun depression, but as you can see here, I was struggling just a little bit as that Vickers was just peeking up over the hill. I had missed that shot, but this is the angle that your armor is the strongest. Now, I'm also making sure to be very aware of my surroundings. I'm not trying to tunnel vision. I'm always paying attention to where the enemies are. I had picked up that there was an enemy just starting to come out from behind us, which puts our entire team in a really bad spot, and had to focus on him, get rid of him, so that he wasn't causing a lot of damage to our team. And so here, I mean, some enemies are just kind of poking themselves out, but I'm trying to keep myself behind that rock. I'm being very self-aware. So as I am pointing and looking at other targets, I'm trying to keep myself protected from those other angles. And so that if that E100 did poke over while I was focusing on someone, then for the most part, I was trying to keep myself protected from him while I was focusing on another enemy. So here, I mean, we're basically ahead. I'm just trying to collect as much damage as I possibly can now, but I'm still trying to keep myself behind the rock. You want to try using as much of the environment as possible. Side scraping is a little tricky in the IS-7 just because of that pike nose. The thing about it is if you angle that pike nose, then that pike, that one side that you're trying to side scrape against, becomes too flat and can get penned. So it's a little tricky, but if you ever end up getting in a situation where you're bear hugging, just basically like right up in somebody's face, then you point that pike nose just straight at them, because that's when your armor is going to be the strongest. So just one example. I've got a few other games here that I'm going to try doing an example, but that was a very, very prime position where I could use just that little bit of gun depression on that hill, pointing my cannon down, just peeking over and firing shots just right into the enemy. So this one, I'm looking at the lineup of what the enemy has, what we have. There's a lot of lights, mediums, and so most likely everyone's going to go out here to the dunes, the enemy. So I wanted to make sure I was getting myself over. I try pointing myself forward with the pike nose. I was able to bounce from that object. I keep going. I want to get up with my team and help them as much as I can. And I'm not putting myself in an area that's going to rely on 10 degrees of gun depression. I got a little unlucky there with that shot, but I'm just putting myself in that position where I'm using that little bit of hill. I mean, here he's basically dead, and then just being able to use that gun depression just a little bit and that forward facing. Now here, I kind of put myself in a bad position. This is kind of an example of what you don't want to do, and if you get yourself in a position where you're trying to put yourself in a position that requires too much gun depression, because you don't have a lot, like I said earlier. You only have 6 degrees, and you'll kind of see it here where the IS-7 really struggles with that gun depression. And so here I just don't have it. I'm trying to get shots off. If I rush the Chieftain, then the light, the T92E1 can get a shot off me. I'm just trying here. I'm just basically like, you know what? They're down 2. I'm basically just going to go for it. But as you can see right there, I just did not have the gun depression to really get shots off, and it was kind of putting me just in a bad place. So you really want to know your tank. You want to know what you're capable of. You want to know your tank strengths and weaknesses, and you want to know the enemy strengths and weaknesses. And if you know that, then you'll know how to position yourselves on the maps. You always want to be putting yourself in a position to be maximizing your strengths and protecting your weaknesses as much as possible. So some of the strengths of the IS-7 is it's got okay penetration. It's not bad. It's got good armor, especially when you're using that pike nose forward facing, a little bit of hull down, the gun depression, protecting that lower plate and just peeking over a hill. You've got really good armor. Your maneuverability is okay for a heavy, not bad. But your weaknesses is you do have that Russian accuracy, so you don't want to be trying to shoot things from really far off. So this is not like a TD, basically. That's that's not one of its strengths. It doesn't have great penetration. It doesn't have great accuracy, so trying to shoot targets from afar off is not utilizing the IS-7 strengths. It's not, super fast, so you don't want to be putting yourself in a position where you're all by yourself, trying to face, another light tank, because you could get flanked. And you don't have a lot of gun depression, so you can't be putting yourselves in positions that require that. So that's just an example. So in here, I'm trying to be a little bit cautious. I am trying to use a little bit of these hills, just a little bit of my gun depression. And once again, I'm being very aware of the map. So typically there's a lot of people that will camp back here on that one spot. There was a grill that was just detected, but there still could be others that aren't. I'm now paying attention to see where all the enemies are. We don't have them all detected, which tells me, okay, there may be still a chance that there's some tank destroyers up there on the ridge. But yeah, I'm trying to be very, very aware of my surroundings, and I count. I always try to count and see if I can find it. Once I find and know exactly where all they are and where they've been detected, that gives me excellent visibility on where I can go, places I can be, positions I can put myself in to try to really get up there and against the enemy. I'm looking at the lineup of my team. So I didn't want to go completely left because there was those destroyers there, and I'm kind of just poking myself out around here and just putting myself in a unique position to get a different angle on these enemies. I've got teammates over here on the right. I'm once again paying attention to my surroundings, trying to help my team. I was able to get rid of that object. Trying to keep, and even though the IS-7 does have good armor, I'm still trying to use the environment as much as possible, like using this rock and this hill to still protect myself as much as I can. So here I'm just trying to look for opportunities. I've got teammates kind of focusing and suppressing these bad guys here, so I'm gonna move up, and you're gonna see just how bad of a position this is gonna put these enemies in, because this is exactly where I am now putting myself in a spot to maximize the IS-7's strengths. This is a perfect example because I can use just that little bit of gun depression. This spot does not require a lot. The enemies are fairly up close, which helps with that accuracy, and they don't really have much of a shot. So this is a prime example of how you want to be trying to position the IS-7, just like on the mines, the first example, this example, just where you're protecting that hull, using a little bit of that gun depression you have, just so that they can either just see your turret. If you have to expose a little bit of your pike nose, you know, that you're forward facing. There I just had just enough hill and gun depression that they were only able to see my turret, which was just perfect. And then just basically going in and here, just finishing off the enemy. So hopefully this helps. Really try just putting something together to really show you how you want to position the IS-7. So you're a heavy, you want to be front lines, you want to kind of be close, but you don't want to be completely silo. You want to move with your teams, look at the lineup. That'll help you determine how enemies and your teammates may position themselves on the map. So anyway, this is the Muffin here. You guys stay cool and keep tanking.